Welcome to the More You Know podcast. Today I have on school safety advocate Alana Pinckley, and we spoke about school shootings, neurodivergence, the issues that students are facing now, and the ways that we can solve them. All right, so who do I have here today?
Hi, I'm Alana.
That's great. And just to start off, I hear that you're a podcaster, a blogger, neurodivergent, and a multifaceted person. The first question is, how the hell do you see identity and making sense of yourself?
That's a good question. It's one of those things where I feel like, just reminding myself every day that I'm human is what really helps me make sense of myself. Because, I always thought that in life you had to choose option A or B. You had to pick one side or the other. And I always felt like I needed an option C, people would say, are you religious or not? Are you getting married or not? Where are you politically? And it just made me kind of feel like I didn't fit in anywhere. So option C to me has more nuance. I believe in God and I have a personal relationship with God, but I'm not religious. And I think, marriage is man-made. I think love can exist in all kinds of different forms. And I think growing up, I didn't feel like I could really express that fully. And I think it just feels like we're constantly being asked to pick a side, and not everything fits into two categories. So I just kind of make sense of myself by remembering that I'm a human being with a soul, and I'm going to constantly evolve. And people, if they're not comfortable with it, then, that's okay, because they have their lives to live outside of mine. So that's really how I've been able to do it, because I couldn't make sense of myself, honestly.
hmm hmm And at what point was there like sort of an inflection point where people come at you with their attacks or disregard or whatever feelings about the way that you make sense of things, like you're, option A, B instead of A or B, and you go from taking it personally to sort of just moving on. How long did it take for you to just kind of like, oh, whatever, humans do human shit?
Um, I was a people pleaser for most of my life. So honestly, it probably didn't happen till I was 24 or 25. Um, that's when I really was like, you know what? I'm just gonna say what I believe. There has to be someone out there who agrees with me that, and there were, once I started actually, stepping into that, there were a lot of people that do agree with me. I think it's just that, we always see one side or the other. We see that in the media, we see that in friendships and families. So it's harder to find those people that are willing to actually, be more complicated or nuanced.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting that you find people who agree with you, because at least for me, what I find is that I have a lot of people who, yeah, they do agree with me in certain aspects of what I do and what I like, but a lot of it is more so that they agree with like my the stance I take with being authentic, and it's like they respect that enough that whether or not they agree with me is irrelevant, because what they'd rather see shine through is me being authentic and me being the person that I am versus me
Mm-hmm.
posturing just so that I can agree with them or kind of just fake it so that I can stay friends with them, because the basis of the friendship or the basis of the relationship is me being me. And so that's allowed me
Mm-hmm.
to, it's kind of filtered a lot of the people in my friend group, because obviously being a high schooler, yeah, I don't really share a lot of my thoughts about many things because I'm still developing them, so I don't really
Mm-hmm.
know much. But it's like the big territory is just jokes, people who want jokes and fun and all that, games, laughter. And then it's gotten a little down as I've started the podcast and my blog, obviously. uh like the few who get it are the people who are also extremely authentic with themselves, and maybe they're like the kid who's trying to go to Harvard, but they also have their own organization or thing that they're doing, and they also understand what it takes to sort of be yourself in a setting where jokes are the ways that we express ourselves rather than being ourselves and doing something that's sort of out of the box. So that's pretty
Hmm.
interesting that you bring up there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it also, it shows up differently depending on the generation that you're
Hmm.
in. I think authenticity is starting to be more prominent in the younger generations. Um, I think it just depends, there's different generations that grew up with, less, I guess, individuality.
Hmm.
But I'm starting to see that more expressed in the younger generations.
Hmm. And on the topic of generations influencing each other, that segues into the next question of what people in your life have shaped you the most, whether by their presence or absence, and in what ways did they shape your life?
Yeah. Um, I think that, there were many periods of my life where I didn't really have someone I could go to.
Hmm.
And I feel like those experiences are actually the ones that shaped me the most. Because I grew up in a very small town that was kind of limited to the outside world. And, most people in those environments, they're taught to prioritize stability and get the degree and get the job and, climb the ladder. And that
Hmm.
didn't really make me feel fulfilled. So I kind of had to figure out a lot on my own.
Hmm.
And, I've been pretty open about some of those struggles on Substack. And it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. But I kind of had to tell myself that, it's okay to follow my dreams. And I think a lot of creators and entrepreneurs they'll tell you the same thing. There's when you try to pursue things, a lot of people have to do that on their own because it's hard for other people to understand why they might be taking a risk.
Hmm.
So, I've learned that the absence of support, it can change you more just because you learn how to make those decisions without needing anyone to validate them first.
Hmm. That's an interesting insight. And on that topic, for you as an entrepreneur, do you find motivation or deprivation? Do you apply that? Which of those do you apply to the moves that you make as a person, just in your life or on a business aspect or whatever?
Um, I mean, I think it's really just motivation to do something that helps humanity, if that makes sense. I think I was still in college during COVID. It was, I think, my junior year. Gosh, I don't even know. The time has been weird since COVID.
Mhm.
Um, and I think just like seeing how things have played out since then is what kind of motivated me to do what I do today with,
Mhm.
schools and stuff like that.
Mhm. That's interesting. And with like kids and all, schools
Mm.
and younger people, um, this is sort of jumping back to childhood stuff a little bit, but related with the kids. What patterns do you see in those who lack like the mentor, supportive, or just like great adult figures in the major periods of their life, like childhood, being a teen, early adulthood, maybe
Mhm.
you're a junior in college, when everything is feeling new?
Yeah, I think not having a mentor doesn't mean you're destined to fail. You know,
Mhm.
when you don't have one, you do have to learn a lot through trial and error. And sometimes you make really good decisions, and sometimes you make terrible decisions. And at the end of the day, the change kind of comes from within. No matter if you have a mentor, if you don't, they can guide you, but the change has to come within. And I think a good role model can influence you to be good, and a bad role model can influence you to be like them, but they can also show you what you don't want to be like. So
Yeah.
I think, sometimes people become independent and resilient because they didn't have a mentor, but it can make your path, a lot more challenging when you don't have one.
Mhm. Yeah, I was on the internet one day, I was scrolling, and I saw this interesting short from a guy, and he was talking about how one of his life goals, he strives to be like the perfect student, in the sense that if you define a student as someone who learns, then in any condition that you put them in, whether it's a bad one. So you have a bad teacher who doesn't grade well, maybe uses AI for their templates or whatever nonsense, or maybe a good teacher. In either of those contexts, they'll learn what to do or what not to do and how to respond best. And I feel like that's also what distinguishes a lot of kids and people who maybe lack things but still come out great. And I'd say that's kind of in your case, since you kind of learn what not to do in life, what to do, where you stand with like beliefs and everything that you have, because you're like, well, man, these people are restricting me. I don't want to be that type of person for myself
Mhm.
and hold those types of beliefs. So that I think is like the key. Like, how good of a student are you? And it's funny that that sort of feeds into your passion for working with children and people who are in like the teaching space. Hello, everyone. If you'd like to support The More You Know, please follow and subscribe. I cannot believe that after all the YouTube videos I used to watch when I was younger, that suddenly I have to do this call to action for the viewers. But anyone who does that, anyone who enjoys the episodes, anyone who watches through seriously all of them, or at least just a few, that effort would be greatly appreciated. And thank you all for listening. Now let's get back to the episode. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think I've had people that were, I guess, called mentors. You have those in college and stuff like that, but you know, everyone has a different life path, and a mentor can only provide so much advice based on their perspective. So
Yeah.
sometimes, trial and error is hard, but it can have very positive outcomes if you are able to just stay motivated about what you want to do in the world and make those changes from within.
My last question on this topic is you're an extremely kind, thoughtful, and principled person. And I see it in the writing on your Substack, as well as this conversation and previous conversations we've had. So imagine if you could reverse all of like any difficult times you've had, um, and have things completely differently. Would you say that would be worth losing the person you have or the person you are right now for peace?
Whew. I think that, obviously we all have situations that we never want to experience again.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us feel that way, but I don't think I'd want to erase the person I became for peace. I think peace is one of those things that can be built within your life. But sometimes there are also really beautiful things that can come out of hardship. And if you think about musicians and writers and artists, some of their best work actually came from devastation, because I think having those emotions are what channel those diverse forms of art.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's a lot, and it's the same thing with anger. Like if you have righteous anger, you can use that in a very profound way. And I think that's really important. So I don't think I'd trade the knowledge and who I became for peace, because I think if you continue to grow, you can learn how to make peace in your life.
That's cool. What is righteous anger? I've heard of it, the whole church stuff, but I don't know what it
Yeah,
is exactly.
they talk about it in the Bible, and other texts, I'm pretty sure. But I think to me, it's just the kind of anger that comes from seeing so much harm that it like hurts you and you feel called to like express that. Whereas reactive anger is more about ego. So it's like if someone um, says something bad to you or something that, pisses you off, then you
Mm-hmm.
react emotionally and say something inflammatory back. So I see righteous anger is kind of like what they said Jesus would express.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like rage. It's like female rage or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like those female rage memes. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. What influenced you to start your podcast, Empower K through 12? Tell me the mission behind every post and clip.
So this is this kind of came out of my experience when I used to work in conferences. I used to work in education partnerships, so I'd reach out to a lot of superintendents and directors from different school districts across the country, and then I'd invite them to speak. So I'd work with them on like speaking engagements and content. And there are just so many gaps that I found when I would go to these conferences. I would hear all of the conversations and challenges that school leaders were dealing with, but I didn't feel like there was a way for the whole community to connect and hear these stories as a whole. I think there's a lot behind the scenes that even parents aren't aware of. So that's kind of what the idea came from. And also just education is changing so rapidly, and we have AI and student engagement and technology integration. There's a lot there. So the podcast is kind of just to bring some of those conversations out of the conference room and allow other people to have access and kind of come together. And I think, podcasts are great nowadays because everyone can access them. So we're not as secluded to those kinds of conversations.
And I see with your podcast, you're sometimes speaking with leaders, but then recently you invited on like I think it was a university student who was working on like this device. And so like can we get like a sense of the types of guests that you have? Because of course there are conversations that are going on with the leaders and the people who can actually like activate change. But then you're also talking with people who have propositions for things that could be changed or like the tools to make the change work. And so like how do we kind of get like all of them to like work together in a way? Like how would you see maybe your podcast down the line being a uh like just a connecting force between those two?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way that a lot of conferences are set up for K-12 is you'll have sessions that are happening. They're kind of like classes for the education people that they can go into and learn. And then they also have trade show booths where the vendors are. So if they're selling like a school safety device or something like that, they can walk through the vendor hall and kind of stop at each booth and see what products are out there. The problem with some of these conversations is they can be very sales heavy. So, people get cold calls about products and people asking you to buy things, but those can kind of happen in person too. And if you get stuck at one of these booths, someone's trying to sell you something, it's kind of hard to explore more. So with mine, I have guests that come on, and instead of focusing on the product, we kind of talk more about either the solution as a whole and some of the challenges affecting K-12. So there was one I actually did on the E-rate funding. And so we barely touched on the product, and we mostly talked about how it affects the schools. And that's kind of how I frame them. So they're not very sales heavy, and you can actually get to know the individual and the solution.
What's E-rate funding?
Oh, it's the funding for the school systems when they get providers for network broadband and stuff like that. So it
I understand
it
that.
allows them to get a discount on that, the E-rate funding.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a federal funding program.
Okay. And what made you so passionate about school safety?
So when Uvalde happened, that was right when I had started working with school districts, and I just remember seeing it on the news, and it really hit me really hard. And also just the school leaders I was working with, like that was one that really hit a lot of people. And I eventually started producing some of the school safety conferences, and I heard a lot about the challenges nationally, and I just felt personally called to help. Just, I don't have kids yet, so I have a little bit more time to step into those kinds of roles and kind of help out where I can. So that's kind of what started it. And then also just some of the things that I experienced growing up. and seeing some of the things other kids experience, it just allows me to kind of help in that way too.
Okay. And for basic context, what was the event like? What happened in the Uvalde thing? Sorry, I must have been like younger because I never heard of it.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. It was the one that was down in Texas where the gunman went into a school full of elementary kids. And I
Yes.
forget, I think it was over 20, I think, that were either shot or killed. But yeah, it was a bad one. It was really
Mm,
sad. He was a former student and like,
mm,
yeah, he got in through a back door that was propped open or something like that.
mhm. Okay. Well, that unfortunately also gets to the next question of what are the biggest threats right now to school safety, and what makes that goal of school safety so difficult to achieve?
School safety is a lot broader than people realize. I think a lot of people just think school shootings and intrusion and stuff like that. But there are also substance use. There's online threats that people will post on social media and Snapchat and things like that. There's cybersecurity. There's districts who have had information leaked before, so it's just it encompasses a wide range of things.
Mhm,
But some of the main right now, I think, are targeted violence and online threats because we're seeing so many cases of kids that will post like, "Oh, I'm gonna, shoot a school," something like that, and then that just immediately causes a ton of people to freak out, especially if other students can see stuff like that. So
mhm,
that's one that's been prominent. And then we're also seeing many cases of young people get involved in, online situations that exploit kids.
mhm,
Um, Roblox has been one that has been in the news for things like that, where there's like pedophiles and even like online like crime organizations that are targeting kids and trying to get them involved in like certain movements. So those have been pretty extreme, but every community has different circumstances just based on where they are. And I think what makes it difficult is a lot of people are still focused more on reaction than prevention. Um, a lot of people go into reactive mode and they want to put all these products in the school. But if people are struggling with mental health and things like that, they're still going to struggle no matter how much prevention you put in the school. So I
mhm.
think it's just important that we look at the root of these issues.
And what to use the root?
I think the root is, I mean, a lot of it, I think, stems down to mental health right now. And also just the gun laws that we have.
Mhm. Interesting. In a recent interview with the blogger, you asked the question, are school shootings the price of freedom for America? What type or types of change were you suggesting in that statement? And especially what you just said now about people not focusing on the guns as an issue for school safety. And how might those changes that you're thinking of be controversial?
I think in the US, we just have a very complicated relationship with freedom and collective safety. So I'm not saying like we should take everyone's rights away,
Mhm,
but I'm just asking whether there are things we've collectively decided we're unwilling to change. And I think this is, I mean, school shootings and I mean, shootings in general in America have been repeatedly confronted with consequences. And it makes you wonder why there hasn't been more proactive change around it. Um, so I think it's a conversation we're allowed to have and we should have. And it doesn't mean that we're on one extreme side. Like I said, some of us are option C. So I mean, I just think there should be stricter things in place, but I'm not saying we need to also take away everything because
mhm,
then we're also going to deal with like more illegal, I guess, gun trades and things like that. So criminals will still have access to them.
mhm. And so, what to use option C? What is the 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 compromise we can make for balancing rights, but then also school and kid safety and crimes across the U.S. involving gun ownership.
I think we just have to find a way to meet in the middle, um, to maybe put stricter laws in place.
Mm,
Because at the end of the day, I mean, they have done some things. Like if a kid is able to get access to a gun and bring that to school, they're holding the parents liable. So that's going to make some of the parents very careful, um, especially about keeping things like in a safe and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, there still needs to be some stricter laws in place, because it shouldn't be so easy for some people to access a weapon.
okay. You often write about feeling restless, that people won't open their eyes to our stagnant social systems. One that I've personally felt strongly about are schools since I'm a student. Could you explain how education is governed from the national to the district level? And does change typically happen bottom to top or top to bottom?
There are federal laws and funding, so states have their own requirements and policies, but then you get down to districts and individual schools, and that's where a lot of the actual implementation happens. So a lot of the actual change comes through the people that are actually operating in the schools. So they'll have like board meetings and community meetings, and what the parents want to see for the students. That's how a lot of things like bonds get passed, and the bonds are what fund some of the big district-wide projects. So if you get a new gym or something like that, they usually will do a bond program for that. Um,
Mm,
and that's why those community endeavors are so important for parents and kids and teachers and everyone to be involved. But being outside of the school, I haven't seen a lot of that firsthand, so I can't speak too much about how all of that works, but that's kind of like the basis of how things get passed.
interesting. And in between there, you have like the conferences that your podcast is sort of simulating. Where does that play in terms of, it's the entry point for advertisers and salespeople to give you their school safety product, or, you know, um, I don't know if there are teachers or leaders, like define leader in those types of conferences that you were in.
Yeah, those are the superintendents and some of like the directors of academics, special education. We'll have directors of facilities and safety. But the events that I do now with the role I'm moving into, those are going to be primarily school facilities. So I'll be
Hmm.
working a lot with like the environmental stuff and all the good stuff, the HVAC systems and air quality. So I'll be doing a lot of the, how we can make schools more sustainable, which I'm really excited about because, you know, being neurodivergent, I did not like the fluorescent lights and the temperatures of rooms when I was in school. It
Mm,
was like, it was just so inconsistent. So I think it would be nice to make schools more relaxing and have more greenery and have more different kinds of lightings for different kinds of students, because it
mm.
really does change the student engagement when you have a school that's fixed like that.
For you, do you maybe have a personal experience or like an anecdote from someone else who, being in a school that accounted for those differences made a change in how they experience education there? Or or is it just like, this is what I'm hoping for based on like some troubles that I had when I was younger?
I mean, I know a lot of school leaders now that have started implementing changes like that in their schools. But
Hmm.
when I was in school and when I was in college, they didn't start renovating anything until after I had left. So I got, I guess the last year on both ends before they really started putting in the big projects. And I think that came after COVID because they got a lot of funding from the pandemic that they used to add in new initiatives.
Interesting. Okay. Outside of safety, what about schools right now do you hate most? Like peer pressure, drug or alcohol use, learned helplessness from certain students, AI usage, and wish to change?
I think a lot of what I dislike about the education system here um, comes down to kind of the system we're in. I think even
Mm,
like the financial system we're in and the corporate system we have in America, that contributes to a lot of what we're seeing in the schools and the behaviors in the schools because kids have less time with their parents. Um, they're not outside as much, and humans are biologically wired to be connected with those things.
mm,
So, you know, maybe this is a strong take, but I don't think kids should be spending all day in school and then coming home with homework on top of their clubs and activities and sports. I think that's too much because children should be allowed to be children.
mm,
Um, and I think at the end of the day, you can be educated, but you have to have a regulated nervous system to be able to even stay at a job and go through an interview, no matter how smart you are. So I think
mm.
those things are really important. I think we should be putting more emphasis on emotional regulation and learning things that kind of help kids find a sense of purpose in life instead of telling them those things aren't possible. And yeah, I think we're just dealing with a lot of mental health problems here, and kids and adults are both struggling and overwhelmed. So I think just putting more emphasis on those things because I just don't think sending kids home with worksheets is going to solve a lot of the issues we're seeing right now.
Mm. I see. It's like, you load them with the work, they're all stressed. Some of them go a little whack, and then they take their parents' rifle and yeah, Texas.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what to you is there like a distinction that you have between treating them as they are like children and stuff versus sort of babying students and not acknowledging that, because like once you cross over into the teen years, what I dislike personally is the lack of sleep a lot of us get versus the younger
Mm-hmm.
students who don't need it as much. But there is a certain sense that as you're like for some kids, like this is the rest of their education. They're not going to go to college. And so it would be sort of false to prepare them for like like not prepare them for the working world if, it's like there's still a lot of like SCL or free time or whatever
Yeah.
still going into the teen years. So like where do you find that distinction between, balancing the understanding that mental health is important because you're still like you're 18, like you're not an adult really, versus
Mm-hmm.
all right, well, you're nearing the time when you kind of have to mature. How do we mature?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what makes it really complicated is that everyone grows up in a different family environment. So
Mm,
even if you're trying to provide the resources they need at school, they could have a completely different environment at home and they're seeing their parents behave a different way. And almost all of us are born thinking that what we were raised in must be normal. Like, especially if you're a really little kid and your parents always yelling at you, you're going to think something you're doing is wrong. And I think it really just takes a village for it to work.
mm,
And I think there should be a balance. If kids should be having time for education as well as having time for like building bonds and socializing. So I think even just sending kids home with homework that they're doing on their own, I just think there should maybe be time in the day where kids can maybe do it in groups or something like that. Not where they're copying off one person's answer though, because I know that tends to happen in group projects.
mhm.
But just something it's more just community focused.
Interesting. Yeah, I think personally, the approach I like to take with school is sort of the one where like you sort of look at you teach the same subjects, but you look more at the utility that the subjects have for like the sort of skills that each of the subjects develop that are useful to the world. And so, say we have English, it's easy to say that, you're a cool kid if you can write an essay in 40 minutes, but like that doesn't help you in research. That doesn't help you if you write policy, if you work at a think
Mm-hmm.
tank, if if you're drafting emails and it's like always rush, 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 you may miss important details. And so shifting the
Yeah.
emphasis from like, all right, quick AP exam, all right, I finished the thing, I can analyze this character in 2 minutes to like a discussion because people are going to be in meetings and stuff like that. A discussion where you like think through the thoughts on command, and rather than seeing writing as thinking, instead as like organizing, editing, you organize the thoughts that you initially had. That's what writing is for. The thinking, you can
Mm-hmm.
do it aloud because that's how you speak. I feel
Yeah.
like there are like many shifts in the way that we teach the subjects that can be useful because you see a lot of the skills shine through, especially in the wake of AI, where a lot of those English skills that typically get disregarded as like humanities bullshit are very useful. You have a lot of illiteracy. You have a lot of people who can't advocate for themselves. You have the person who's like, who can't even type a prompt now. Like, you can't even turn to the AI because the base level skill of asking how to get the thing that you want, you didn't develop in the school. There's
That's
just
so,
so much, yeah, there's just so much like adaptations that I feel like they sort of coincide with the mental thing, but I think
yeah.
a large part of why a lot of people find it useless and therefore give up in schools is because they don't feel like they're learning anything that's directly tied to what they might do. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
schools and even my teachers, when I ask them, "What am I doing this for?" They'll just say like, "Oh, it's just to like broaden your horizon." But a job doesn't broaden your horizon. You just develop one skill and you specialize. And so I figured that
Exactly.
at the very least, you learn a skill that's useful in anything you do. Because me learning about like a math equation doesn't necessarily apply to every place, but I don't know how to like the specific adaptations you'd need for specific skills, but I just feel like a lot of school leaders would also have to think about that as well. Not because I think that contributes to a lot of the mental issues. Because when you feel that what you're learning is useless, and then you keep getting told that it's useful, and then it's like you start to ruminate, and you're like, man, I suck at this, therefore I'm bad at it, even though it's not representing what I will, the types of challenges that I'll encounter in the real world. It's like this weird vicious cycle where you're like, man, I don't even care about this day, I give up. And you still feel bad, but you're learning things that don't really help you that everyone forgets the
Yeah.
next summer. I don't know.
That is a very, no, that's a very interesting perspective. And that's very true. And that's why I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the issues with student engagement. Everyone wants to say, oh, it's social media, it's technology, these kids are lazy. But again, I say we always have to go back to the root. And
Mm,
what's happening here is the younger kids are very smart. And
hmm.
people say, oh, that they're so sassy. Well, they're also very smart. And that's why they feel like they can be that way.
Yeah.
And they're all dysregulated because they know they're not going to use math a lot of the time. If they're not going into math, I have not used long division since like I was in college for math class. Like I don't even know if I know how to do it anymore. And I know people probably won't like me saying that, but we need to focus more on finding what children's purposes are and then helping them go towards what they want to do. Because
Mm.
I often think about all of the things we could have been learning instead of math. Like we could have
I
been
Yeah.
learning how to farm, like we could have been learning, I don't know, we could have been learning life skills. I feel
Hmm.
like school and college really didn't prepare me for the real world as much as
Interesting.
it could have.
Yeah. But I do want to ask you then, how would that change the role of a teacher? Because even the teachers themselves are specialized because the whole point is, all right, you only do math. Stick to your calculus lane. You do English, you do science. But if you want people to have life skills and integrate things and, find that purpose, who's responsible for you finding the purpose, if not you personally encountering each of the subjects and saying, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. But like, you can't
Hmm.
exactly, like, even though you find the purpose, you can't say, all right, I don't want to do math anymore, because I mean, that teacher's still there. They won't have a job. What'll they do?
Yeah.
What does that mean for the teachers? I don't know. It's a weird relationship between the teacher student that you'd have to change.
It's yeah. It's so difficult because we've been following the same system for so long. And
Mhm.
it doesn't mean it was always the right system, though. And I think people need to understand that just because we've been doing standardized tests and we've been making changes in education, and even though those changes have had positive outcomes, I don't think we've found the right recipe, obviously, because
Mhm.
you're seeing the behaviors in students, you're seeing the teachers that are there for a year and then they leave. That also impacts the students because they feel, oh, this teacher's just going to leave in 2 months anyway. And
Yeah.
it's sad, but I mean, that's the reality. We need a
Mhm.
complete restructure, and I don't have all the answers. I It would take a village of community leaders and teachers and people like us and students to just be fed up at some point. Kind of like in the pandemic where everything just shut down. And I think
Mhm.
that's when a lot of people started realizing, why are we actually operating this way?
Yeah. Have you ever seen your faith or neurodivergence? I always mess up that word for some reason. Or
It's a long
neurodivergence
word.
as a setback? If so, how have you combated that thinking?
Yes, absolutely. I think both have been a setback in many different ways. I
Hmm.
spent a long time thinking there was something wrong with me because, when it would come, I was raised Catholic, but I also had a lot of other Christians in my family. And when I would go to church, I just would sit there and I wasn't feeling what other people would feel, when they were praising and singing and all of this. That doesn't mean it's fake. That's just, I didn't personally feel it. It felt like an act to me. Um, and a lot of people think that you don't have a real relationship with God if you don't have religion, or if you're not a Christian, or if you're not a actually religious Christian that goes to church every Sunday, then you don't know Jesus. But I don't think
Hmm.
that's true because Jesus taught the latter. He taught people that he was going up against religious people. And I think that's just something that has kind of been a setback because a
Hmm.
lot of people view the Bible. I view the Bible like a mirror in a way. So when people read the Bible, it kind of reflects how they feel on the inside. So if they have a lot of hate and fear and stuff in their heart, then they're going to see all of that in the Bible. Um, and so it was a setback for a while, but then I started finding people that, like I mentioned earlier, they were similar. And then
Hmm.
with the neurodivergence, I mean, autism and ADHD, they are disabilities, but a lot of the issues that I had with these two things came from the system that we're in. Because
Hmm.
when I started doing my own thing and having more flexible systems and being around people who understood me, a lot of my challenges, they lessened.
Interesting. And I think it's somewhat key that you point out that you mentioned ADHD as a shucks. What did you say? Oh my God. Um,
ADHD, I said ADHD and autism are disabilities.
yeah. But what I find fascinating for like some people that I've seen and sometimes even look up to is that a lot of them credit autism or ADHD as reasons for why they're successful. And they
Mm-hmm.
blame the type of school system that we're in that makes perfectly normal, just, random chances of genetics and like which polar egg, you know, like became the zygote and then became a human. Like they make those things into mental health issues, and then you get medicated. And I'm not saying like people should do this or that because I have absolutely no idea. But
Mm-hmm.
it's funny that even typical things like being like not neurotypical or having ADHD, things that are helpful sometimes also become bad in a system that the root of its issue is having the mental issues because
Yep.
no one addresses what it's even for. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Really makes you wonder because, yeah, like you mentioned, there are a lot of people who like have been successful because ADHD can have you hyperfixate on things, but then you struggle with executive
Hmm.
functions, you struggle with like
Yeah.
other things. Like I can do amazing things by sitting on my laptop in 6 hours, but then I'll forget to eat or I'll forget to like do a chore or a task that I was supposed to do or respond to an email, and that can make it really difficult. But
Hmm.
I've started giving myself a little bit more flexibility and taking pressure off of myself because I do what I'm able to do right now with the resources I have, and um, people have been pretty understanding. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to rush all the time, and that's something
Yeah.
you also mentioned earlier. And it makes you do things incorrectly. You'll make more errors. Your words will come out jumbled because we feel like we have to rush because what we're seeing on social media, it just feels so fast paced all the time.
Hmm. Speaking of computers, what do you find so enchanting about IT files and RSS links and all the like?
So this is funny. I grew up playing a lot of video games. That was kind
Yeah.
of my escapism. Um, I would play a lot of Call of Duty Zombies, and then I would play Minecraft. That was a big one. Have you ever played Minecraft?
No. You know what I used to do?
Oh,
Because my
huh.
parents they wouldn't pay for the $30. So my siblings and I we never mentioned it. So I'd either play like this bootleg version called Planet Craft,
I've
or
heard of that.
yeah, I love it. It's a fun game. Or I would play like the Minecraft free trial. They give you like this like Minecraft education version. I'd play that during class in 4th grade before COVID hit. Very fun.
Yep.
Or I'd do the free trial, the 90-minute trial. I'd play it over and over again, even though I'd lose all the like the things. Yeah. Just restart each new world.
No.
Yeah.
Minecraft is the best.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of what I started getting me into technology because um, I would play games, I would make videos, I would vlog. They were terrible vlogs. I was a kid, but I like to edit stuff and do all that stuff. And that's kind of, it's one of those things where I just picked up on it pretty quickly and I thought it was fun. So I just enjoyed the learning curve that came with technology. And before I graduated college, I was much less social and I was more reserved and shy. So I liked the fact that I didn't have to be around too many people. But over time, my personality changed and I left IT. It was very stressful though. Like people, man, I think it's underrated or not underrated. What's the word?
Understated?
I don't Yeah, something like that. People don't understand how stressful it is because the job I had in IT, I was a managed IT provider. So we had different companies and clients that we would do their IT for. And they they would call just freaking out and expecting me to fix it. And I was like a 19-year-old in college. I was just like, I can't fix everything. I can only do with the education they gave me. We didn't have Chat GPT back then. So I had to figure it
Back
out.
then?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And during COVID it got worse because everyone worked from home. So we had to set them up on a VPN and oh man, people get very stressed about their
Hmm.
technology. So be nice to your IT people. unless they're
Yeah.
actually being, not trying to help you and not caring. That's a different story. But most of them really do, like, they get very stressed out trying to help people and fix their issues. And we would work. I would see some of my colleagues, they would work like after hours on call trying to help people. Because if there was an emergency, like if someone had a cybersecurity attack, they could wake up at 1 a.m. and get notified and have to deal with it.
Mm. What were some good memories?
Oh, from that job?
Yeah.
Or when I was in IT? Oh, I mean, I was working around a lot of people that were neurodivergent, so we really understood each other very well. There wasn't really social hierarchy, but it is a male-dominated field. So I was working with a lot of like older men because initially I was there for an internship. So it was just a bunch of like older field men. They would go out into the field and set up. Sometimes I'd go with them. We'd have to bring measuring tapes. There was one time I drove one of those, what are those things that what are they called? They have them in construction and you sit up on this little thing and it like raises people up. I can't think of what it's called right now. A lift, some kind of lift.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was one of those. So those were fun. Going out into the field was a lot of fun.
That's interesting. And this is a bit of a longer question. What I found interesting about your tech background is that you used it for helping the elderly navigate smartphones or fixing computer issues for high schoolers. These are both populations who may not have a grasp on how much things are changing in the world technologically. And in that case, what are your thoughts on AI's entrance into education? What safety risks does it have for students, especially with the cases of teens dying after doing something bad it told them to do? And how do we regulate AI usage with teens while still preparing them with tech skills that'll be invaluable in the near future?
I think this is one of those questions that a lot of people are really struggling with. And it makes me sad because I feel like it could have all been avoided if they just rolled it out with regulations in the first place. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole about talking about the government, but I feel like we've had these patterns throughout history with the internet and social media, and I just feel like they should have known better. And not given the public unlimited access to this in the first place. But, kids are already using it and they're going to use it. Adults are using it too. So I'd rather teach them how to use it responsibly at this point. It has been very beneficial in education, especially in special education where it's been used as an accessibility tool. So I've really liked seeing that. But again, it's very sensitive topic because we see how it's causing kids to make poor decisions. It's damaging the environment. It's making people go into psychosis. It's causing a lot of different problems. So I think we need guardrails and age appropriate design. And we need adults who understand the risks and can teach their kids how to use it safely. And I think we also just need to teach kids that it's a tool. It's not something that is human. It can't make certain things that are based off of human judgment. And you shouldn't outsource your judgment to a machine, especially because a lot of the people we're seeing nowadays, they see from their perspective. So if they're putting certain information into AI about a certain event that happened, the AI is only going to know based on the information they told them. So it can make them completely think that they're right about something that they're not right about. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people where they'll put if they're in a fight with someone, they'll put it into the AI and then they'll say, oh, AI says you're wrong. But you're not, AI doesn't have the context of anything other than what you gave it. So I don't think it should be used in that way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's sort of like a government-wide cutoff point for AI usage in education? So, like, say it's like, no, 13, 12, 14, hell no. It's like 15 and up or something because I'm 15. But it's like 15 and up. And then we'll kind of like slowly ease it into, because I'm sure they use it in college. At that point, it's like you sort of
Yeah.
just work with them. But like high school, that's where you're getting the skills. Because I'm sure at some point, it's like, what do you say to the neurodivergent 8-year-old? Or
Yeah.
like are there specific cases? I don't know. Are there like specific cases that you see it being used even in like middle and elementary schools, given all the risks that are still associated with it right now?
I definitely think it's possible because there can be age appropriate design for a specific sort of AI. Like they don't need access to ChatGPT, but we can give them something that's for kids that it's kind of like when have you ever heard of Webkins or Club Penguin?
I've heard Club Penguin. I've
I don't
never
know, you
used it.
might be young for that one, but that's what
Yeah.
we would play when I was a kid. And it's kind of like if you have parental controls, you can't freely type in anything you want to the other penguins. You have options of words to pick. So something kind of like that where um, it doesn't answer the questions have to be fall into a certain range, or if you're using it as an accessibility tool, it can only be used for certain things. So I think that's possible. But again, there's also the other challenges that come with AI in terms of like the environment and people being displaced from their homes because they're building it. You know, I just moved out of Phoenix and they're all over the place. And Phoenix is already a desert out there. So I don't know.
Why
I
there?
just think I I don't know. That's something that I should probably look into. I know it's also just one of those tech cities, but I think it's also helping fund some of the cities, and you know there's some wealthier people that live in Arizona, so I think that's
Mhm.
also maybe part of it.
Okay. And given everything that's happening now in tech, as well as the background that you have, just all of your work in tech, in what ways do you use it right now? Because you said that, I mean, you moved, you're doing the whole podcast, and the school advocacy. How does tech play into your life right now?
I use it a lot, but I also try to make time to be outside. So I use it for my podcast, my writing, my research, gaming, editing. I mean, it's intertwined with a lot of the creativity I do, but I also like to do arts and crafts and spend a lot of time outside and make sure that I stay grounded. And now that we're closer to family, I've been spending a lot of time with my significant other's family. So just making time for those other things and try to make sure that I can disconnect myself as much as possible, because ever since I started what I'm doing now with my podcast and Substack and everything, I have been on it a lot more. And
Mhm.
it's hard sometimes to take a break, um, because I think a lot of us are lacking in-person community and connection, and we've been outsourcing that through technology.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like even me right now, this summer, I've been locked in on growing the Substack, and I'm hoping to get to 1,000 at some point, like this coming year, at least by the end of this year. But with school coming up, I'll be with friends a lot. But I even recently told them like, hey, I'm not trying to like sit and talk all the time because in my free time, I do a lot of like write and everything, and so there's like that um eternal struggle. I'm sure I wouldn't say I'm an entrepreneur because I'm not making money from the Substack, but the push or pivot thing where it's like either you keep going or do you stop? Do you ease off? Is this enough? And right now I'm in that season of push, the season of no, where the no is to my friends and to experiences is the big yes to the end of getting to the high sub account. But also, the only thing that I can really write about are my life experiences. And I get those through conversations with friends and dating and Homecoming and all that stuff. So for me, it's funny. I feel like I'm in IT because of how much, technology with the whole blog and setting that up is intertwined with the life that I live, and that content and life are literally one. It's so weird. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but it's just been an interesting struggle I'm navigating. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're not alone. Actually, I know you're not alone. I think everything happening in the world in general is every it's making every aspect of life unpredictable right now. But
Mhm.
the way I do my thing is I just put out what I can with the energy I have, and it'll happen when it's meant to happen. Like I know for a fact you'll get to 1,000 subscribers. If it's not by the end of the year, you'll definitely get there. But sometimes you just have to do what you can with the resources you have and not try to burn yourself out too much, because it's just better
Mhm.
to be in alignment and those opportunities will come to you.
Mhm. Yeah. When you do have spare time, how do you like to wind down? You mentioned like the walks in nature. You've even posted some like just pictures of you being out in nature. They're always tough. And then
Thank
also
you.
you being with your significant other, and also uh like how else do you like just winding down, chilling out, just a way to like reconnect, whether that's maybe with God for you or just with yourself, people you love. How does that look?
I Yeah, I love a good stroll. I love a good evening stroll or morning stroll. Sometimes I'll go by myself and listen to music, and that's kind of like when I like to connect with God. I'm not a runner. I've never been a runner, but I do like to go on strolls, or sometimes we'll go on hikes. But if I'm alone, I also like to do cozy games. So I'll play Sims or something. I have an iPad that I like to draw on, sketch on sometimes. Um, yeah, a lot of it just comes down to just being at peace in my solitude and trying to reconnect with the physicalities around me. So it's not always I'm in solitude and I'm writing or doing something on my laptop, but I try to find new hobbies that I could do in nature. So I'm about to actually start my garden. Um, I We have a garden space and there's already tomatoes growing, but I kind of want to grow cucumbers and make pickles. So we'll see if if that turns out okay. But yeah, there's other things I'm starting to pick up on and like to do, but a lot of it really does come to just going outside and being at peace with things around me. Yoga is also a good one.
That's awesome. Random question. What's your music taste?
Everything. I told you I'm an option C person. I like everything. I mean, I do have my favorite genres. I like rap and I like EDM, and I'll listen to. I grew up being a Swiftie, so I used to listen to a lot of Taylor Swift. But um, yeah, I really like everything. If I like the song and it fits the vibe, I'm usually cool with it.
That's funny. What's your what sort of like rap artists you like? Or is like what era, I guess? Like Snoop or like I don't
Ooh,
know, Don
oh, I do
Toliver.
love
So they
Snoop
got
Dogg, Don Toliver. I mean, if we're going back, I love Lil Wayne. But my favorite is probably Kendrick Lamar.
interesting. Why is that? Maybe the social justice themes, or you just like the way he sounds?
Yes, the social justice themes. I think he's very connected spiritually. I think he's just a genius in a lot of his lyrics. And yeah, I mean, also, I don't know if Post Malone really counts as rap anymore because he's kind of shifted, but he doesn't count.
I had somehow no.
Okay, that's true. That doesn't count. I did meet
Yeah.
Post Malone one time though, and he was very nice.
Mhm. That's awesome. That's what all singers do when they meet their fans. So
Not
it's not
all.
unique.
Big X the Plug yelled at me when I met him.
Wow. That's
But
awesome that
he
you met him.
okay, these are both the most random situations. I'll tell you super quick. But Post Malone I met at a random bar when I was on a work retreat, and then Big X the Plug I met when I was running a K-12 conference, and he
I'm
walked by
surprised
the
you didn't
hall.
see Morgan Wallen at the bar or
I'm
Tucker,
glad
whatever
I
his
did.
name
I don't want to see him.
is.
I have beef with some of those celebrities because, I mean, there's just certain things. I won't say too much, but there's just certain patterns that I see that I'm like, I think they could be better at, taking accountability and changing, like Zach Bryan, for example, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, Big X the Plug thought I was the press, so I said hi to him and he did not care. He just like walked past and rolled his eyes. But then I saw him later that night, and then he literally came up to me and was like, "You were there earlier, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'm sorry, I was in a bad mood." I was like, "Big X the Plug, you're fine." He was coming out of the iHeartRadio Awards or something like that. He was at the hotel.
Wow.
Um,
That's
but
awesome.
I was like, you're good, dude. But I thought that was super humble to just even remember somebody and then go up and apologize to them. Yeah, I thought that was sweet. Because I also like Big X the Plug, and I didn't want to stop listening to him because he was mean.
Yeah. And my final question for today is, in podcasting, blogging, and working in school safety, it wasn't even neurodivergent. I still messed it up. In school safety, have you found the place you want to be in life? What do the next 10, 20, or 30 years look like? And maybe you don't know and you're still following the questions and creative sparks.
I have not found where I want to be in life. I think I've kind of started focusing on the present more than the 5 year plan, because every time I've tried to have a 5 year plan, it has drastically thrown me in a different direction. That doesn't mean everything has been bad. I've had very good things work out that I have wanted to happen in my 5 year plan, but there's also been a lot of setbacks, like with jobs and finances and COVID, and now with other things that are happening in the world. I think it's been better for me to just do what I'm able to do with the resources I have and focus on the present. So that's kind of, that helped me start my podcast and that helped me start my writing, because I just think about what I can do to make an impact now. And then the 5 year plan, I just have faith that it'll work itself out. I'd like to continue to do stuff with my podcast and my writing, because I like being able to help people with my experiences and connect with them and kind of bring in different perspectives. But also, if it doesn't work out, then I'll just find something else to
Hmm, That's a great way to look at it. All
do.
right.
Yeah.
It's it's been really wonderful getting to speak with you today. Very grateful that we had Miss Alana on this wonderful episode. It was very interesting, and I'm glad to know that you love everything. Basically, you're the option C girl, very cheek.
I'm just living in my own world, and it's the only thing that has kept me sane in these trying times. So I do what I can.
Mhm.
I
All
appreciate you
right.
bringing me on.
Yeah, I'm very grateful. Yeah, I remember I saw, like, when I started, I was like, I think on the first episode, I saw your Substack, and then I checked like the links, the external links, and then you had a podcast and you had your Instagram page, and I was like, damn, you got the whole setup. I need to. I was like taking notes. I was like, how do I do my thumbnail? How do I start like with
Yeah,
the intro? So I recently changed my intro, man. So like
I'm
this thing has
glad.
been, yeah.
I'm
It's
glad it's
very
helped you, because I'm still learning, and I'm changing my intros based on people that I see podcasts, because I started with no knowledge because I wanted to show the learning process, and I get super nervous on camera and I still lose track of what I'm saying, but it's just been a learning process that I wanted to highlight. And in the beginning I didn't have all the setup in the first few episodes. Then I made a Canva and I started trying to make my own kind of thing, and that's what helped. So I'm glad you had some takeaways from it, because I'm still learning from other people too.
Yeah, I'm a big Diary of a CEO guy, so I kind of
Mm-hmm.
just I take his formats, I see his intros, like the mid, like, hey, before you click off the episode, make sure to subscribe.
Yeah,
I just love adding those in like mid clip when it's like getting to the good subjects because it's what
that's
annoys
such a good
everybody.
idea.
It annoys everyone, but like it's the only thing that keeps people engaged. I love it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really lovely having you on. And I hope that we can continue to have more conversations through Substack, and I get to read more of your awesome essays, and you get to read some of my shameless plug awesome epic essays as well. Yeah, I've been messing up a lot of words today, I swear.
Me too. All day, all day. We're human beings, though. We're not
Mhm,
bots. So
mhm,
we can mess up words and sentences, and people will forgive us.
mhm. All right, well, have a good one. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.